Hey everybody, welcome to the Logan Power Show. It's me, your host, Calvin Logan, and I'm excited about what's happening here at the Logan Power Show. We are making a difference across the nation, and we appreciate for you all who are watching this. Without further ado, I want to bring with me a lady who has a powerful play enactment that she's going to talk about. She's going to talk about how she's fighting for the people. She's the one and only Miss Cassandra Alexander-Green. How you doing, man?
I'm wonderful, wonderful, and so glad to be here with you today.
Yes, ma'am. It's glad to have you here with us here at the Logan Power Show. So, without further ado, let's talk about what you got going on with your play enactment. Again, it's the Moore's Ford Bridge lynching reenactment. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. Moore's Ford Bridge lynching reenactment is the only lynching reenactment in the world. And I have directed it for 12 years in Monroe, Georgia. I'm in the metro Atlanta area. And it is it was the lynching of 5 African Americans in 1946. Two couples, the Malcolms and the Dorseys, were lynched, and Dorothy Malcolm was 7 months pregnant at the time. So that's how we get the 5 people that died on that day. They were lynched. 1946 was the first year that Blacks were allowed to vote in the Democratic primary in Georgia. The then governor, Eugene Talmadge, who is considered one of the most racist governors in U.S. history, was the governor at the time. And he ran on a platform that niggas may vote this go round, but elect me. And so as a result of the propaganda that he did, several Blacks were killed that year. Many were tormented, beaten, intimidated into not voting in the 1946 Democratic primary.
Wow. And like for those who don't know, that's pretty much you're talking about just for almost 1946. We're thinking about
70,
74 years ago. So pretty much we haven't hit the 80-year mark. So 74 years ago. So it's not like this is like, oh man, this is a century ago. No, this is 1946. So we got to think about what things just came out of. You came out the Great Depression. 1946,
yes,
World War II was coming to a sort of a phase that we're just getting out of that. Um,
absolutely.
we talk about things that we were moving into, trying to change the perspective of the American dream during that time. And
Yes,
you think about who we had in office and who we're looking to cut into office. So as you can see, these show that things have not really changed since
changed much.
we ain't changed much because we're still having um, situations where there are things where there are African Americans who have been literally disenfranchised, taken advantage of, and there's a lot of things going on. Now, what led into your heart? Say, I'm gonna reenact something, because a lot of times for people who are baby boomers, when they see
Mm-hmm.
something that is like hitting home, like literally they can say, because I tell you right now, if you are the age of, say, of 60 years, 60 or above, and in
Mm-hmm.
certain parts of the country, you may have seen that like
Yes,
live in person. Like you literally say, I saw that. Like literally, I
yes,
seen that. So
yes.
for you to say, hey, I'm going to reenact a situation that happened that was devastating, what led you to say I'm going to do that?
Let me premise that with this, okay? In 1989, I'm from Charleston. I grew up in downtown Charleston. In 1989, I was living in North Charleston, South Carolina, and I lived in a neighborhood where there were Black families and there were white families, just a few Black families and white families. An interracial couple moved in next door to me, and the white men in the community did not like that, and they started tormenting the young woman, the white girl that was married to the Black man. And they had a 6-month-old baby. So when she would come outside, they would call her in lover, blah, 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 B, all this different stuff. And so every time she would call the police, they would say, well, they haven't done anything to you. There's nothing we could do. So I have always been an activist. Since I was 17, 16, I worked with NAACP in Charleston. So it was like crazy. I was like, why can't they do something to help these people? So one night, the men cut the electrical wires to the people's house and shot through the window with a 6-month-old baby in the house. So I
Wow.
was like, you know what? You got to do something. So I called the president of the Charleston NAACP, and I said, listen, this is what's happening in my neighborhood. Can you do something to help? The next day, he came over with the media. And so it was on the news in Charleston. After that, I became their target because I was standing up for them. So I had a shotgun. One of my neighbors, I heard something in my yard one night, and I went to my door, opened the door, and one of my neighbors was standing in my yard with a shotgun pointed at my door, called me a nigger and a B, and said, if you don't get out of this neighborhood, we're going to kill you. I slammed the door, fell on the floor, and spent the night in my home on the floor, afraid for my life.
Mm.
So I filed a report the next day, right? I spent the night on my floor, filed a report the next morning. The guy was arrested. That was in July. In October was our court date. And when it was time for our court date, 2 days before our court date, Hurricane Hugo hit in 1989. So I was like, I can't wait any longer. I cannot stay here anymore. So I moved out of Charleston. Now, come fast forward to 12 years ago, Dr. Charles Steele, who is the president of the National SPLC, came up with the idea for Moore's Ford Bridge because there had been no justice for the two families. So I was writing plays and directing plays at the time, and one of the representatives in Georgia suggested to him, call Cassandra, and let's see if she will take over this project. I was still hurt. I'll be totally honest. I was still hurt from what happened to me in Charleston. And I was like, making a lynching? You know, like, hell no. You know, I mean, literally, that's what I was thinking. So, but I prayed about it, and it was like, this will be a part of your healing. So that's how I started doing the Moore's Ford Bridge lynching reenactment.
Amen. Amen. And you think about, there are certain things that people have not gotten justice for things that happened 70 years ago. Emmett Till,
Yes.
that
Yes.
family never saw any type of justice.
That's right.
If you think
That's right.
about the murder enactment of Malcolm X, no justice.
Yes.
Medgar
Yes.
Evers, we finally saw justice, but it took that
Yes.
lady almost 30 plus years to see
Yeah.
justice. So
Yes.
you think about the things that we talk about. We talk about justice. Martin Luther King Jr. You say like, well, as a one person, but you gotta say to yourself, to take out a person of that magnitude boldly, and
Yes.
to consider to be in some cases a hero in other aspects, in other cases to consider to be a martyr as another. So it's a catch-22. And when you hear some of these stories, you say to yourself like, man, wow, you know, I couldn't imagine, so you say to yourself, well, think about Selma, think about Birmingham,
Yes.
think about all these things that we talk about. Like if you live in North Charleston or Charleston, like the
Yeah.
South Carolina does not have a hate crime bill.
That's what I'm talking about.
So
Yeah.
there's still some of that same um good old boy system that's still running rampant throughout the United States, has not been um, pulled out and extracted from
Yes.
of the culture. So because you've done this play for quite some time, what is the response that you've gotten when doing the play like this?
Okay. So it's a reenactment. So a reenactment is like what the Civil War reenactments that they do. You actually do those on the places, on the spaces where the incidences took place. So we play this out at the jail where the black guy was held, Roger Malcolm. Then we go to the farm area where a fight ended up with him and a white guy, and that's how he ended up in jail, because fighting a white man back then was like a death sentence. And so We go there, and then the final scene, the reason it's called Moore's Ford Bridge lynching is because it took place, they stopped them on a bridge when this white farmer picked him up from jail with his wife and his cousin and his wife and took them to this bridge where there was a mob of 50 to 55 white men waiting for them, and they ended up lynching them.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
that's definitely
This is the
something.
thing. This is why the story got national attention in 1946. George Dorsey was a World War II veteran that had just been home a few months, and he had served his country, and he was determined, to vote, and he was determined, to be a part. The way they treated them in Europe, he felt like was the way that they should be treating blacks here, but that was not the case, of course. And so what they said, he has to remember that he's back in Georgia now. He's not in Europe. He's in Georgia. So they already had a thing against him. And then the other man, Roger, had gotten into a fight with the white man. So that was another thing against them. So that is part of the reason why they were targeted. And the fact that the governor had said he had been in the town a few days before they were lynched, giving his propaganda speech, essentially saying, we got to keep niggas in their place.
Wow.
Now, let me give you a key thing about this. 5 days before my 5 people were killed, Maceo Snipes, who was another returning soldier, had told his mother, listen, I went and fought for this country. If I can vote this year, I'm going to go vote. He went and registered to vote. They had warned Butt County, Georgia. They had warned blacks not to register to vote. He went and registered to vote. That night he got home, 4 white men came to his house and shot him. And he died.
Wow.
So there was a lot in 1946. There was a lot going on with voter suppression. The other key thing that makes it relevant today is that at the bridge when they were killed, I told you there were at least 50 men present. Leading the men off of the bridge, the killers off of the bridge, was a police car with the light on it, and witnesses saw that. So now you're talking police involvement, voter suppression, and the killing of innocent black people. Does that sound familiar?
Sounds very familiar.
Sounds familiar to me. So this is why the Moore's Ford Bridge is so important. And even though right now we're going through a pandemic here, we are determined to do the lynching reenactment, of course, with a lot of safety precautions this weekend. Plus, we have family members from both the Dorsey and Malcolm side that are coming from New Jersey, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
Wow. Absolutely. I know it's gonna be a blessing to reenact something, and it's time to reenact a lot of things. It's like if you reenact slavery, or reenact some of those painful moments, just reenact picking cotton.
Okay.
Like I said, or reenact what's going on in the Louisiana prison, where they are still got stuff like it's back in slavery times, where
Yes.
prisoners are pretty much digging like we're back in the fields. So, but
Yeah.
that's just factual.
Yeah.
There are things that we don't want to bring back, because people say, oh, that's bad memory, but those are learning experiences that we need
Thank you.
to know about, because history always repeats itself in some way, shape, or form, of either a generation from two times ago, a third time, or something. It always
Yeah.
comes back some way, some form, some shape,
Yeah.
somehow. It always comes back to bruise its head. Now, doing this reenactment year after year, what is it that people need to do to sort of like say they want to get involved, or they want to see this every time? Where should they go to get connected with you?
On Facebook, we actually have a page called Moore's Ford Bridge Lynching Cast and Crew. So anyone can go on that page and get any information about what we're doing during the year. We're actually a part of a multi-award-winning documentary on lynching called Always in Season that won at Sundance. It won the jury award at Sundance last year, and I spent almost the entire year of 2019 traveling around the country and outside the country talking about Moores Ford Bridge with people of all races, all, you name it. It was absolutely amazing. And this year, I'm actually doing a documentary exclusively about my story and Moores Ford Bridge that we're going to be submitting to Sundance.
Amen. Well, we definitely claim this is going to be a time where you get to submit and they take you seriously and they put it out there,
Yeah.
because I believe that we got to be able to show some of these things that are always happening on a constant basis. It
Yeah.
may not be something of that type of enactment at that type of level, but it could
Yeah.
be, the verbiage. It could be other things. They're systematic
Yeah.
racism that does has its own Achilles heel, that does bring a lot of turmoil and torment as well. So sometimes you don't gotta lynch somebody. Is basically, could be your words. It could be how
Yes.
you how the suppression of like
Yes.
same old stuff over and over again. Like, this,
Mhm.
my area is not really growing. So if my area doesn't grow, what happens? I either got two choices. I got to move out that area, or I got to live with the situation. Or thirdly, I got to make a decision. If I want to make a difference, then I got to make a difference. But
The
doing that
change. Yeah.
is going to
Yeah.
cost you something.
Yeah.
It may take your life's work for that to help the next generation behind. And you got to ask
Absolutely.
yourself, are you going to be the sacrifice for that neighborhood? Or are you going to just move on and say, hey, I'm out, and call it a day? So that's the things you got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the decisions that we have to make, and especially now. And let me say this: the reenactment is not a separating tool. It should be a tool of reconciliation. But I did a report for NBC last year, and the last thing that I said, no, it wasn't the last thing, but I made this statement during the interview, and it was how the reporter ended it when she did the report. And I said, when you look at the reenactment, if you get angry, I did my job. If you cry, I did my job. Because the bottom line is you start having a conversation. And that is basically what the reenactment is meant to do. Start a conversation between people about race and about, what has happened to us in the past and what is still happening to us right now so that we could possibly change the future.
Absolutely. And I want you all who are listening, you want to make that change. You want to be the ones who do make a difference. Um, Change is not easy. If change was
Yeah.
easy, then everybody would change. So change may require a little push. You may feel a little nudge here or there. You may feel a little pain through the change. But change is good. You got to
Yeah.
ask yourself what type of change you're gonna do, because certain change may not happen overnight. It may take longer than you anticipated, but the change
Yeah.
will start when you make that decision. Final thought before you go, um, based off of what's going on right now and across the nation, people are crying for change. People are crying for help. What do you want people getting out when they watch this reenactment? What do you want people to do moving forward after they've seen it?
I want them to talk about race and what we can do to change the dynamics and the atmosphere when it comes to voter suppression, when it comes to police brutality. How do we make those changes? And it's going to take just what I said. It's going to take a conversation. And can I just throw this in?
Sure.
Moore's Ford Bridge has been in federal court for several years now, trying to get the grand jury transcripts released. But the powerful families have that are involved in the lynching have stopped the grand jury transcripts from being released. What we are doing now, Attorney Joe Bale out of New Jersey at the request of Mr. Anthony Pitch, who actually died last year. He wrote a book about the Moores Ford Bridge called The Last Lynching. It is now being prepared to go before the Supreme Court. So even after 70 years, we can still fight for justice. And that's what I want everyone to remember. We must fight for justice.
Amen. And that's what we want to do. We want to fight for justice. You want to stand for righteousness. Faith without works is dead. So it's time to put our faith to get your bootstraps on. Let's make a difference. Cassandra Alexander-Green, live here at the Logan Power Show. Hey, I want you all who are watching this, let's make a difference. Let's plow it forward. And to God be the glory. And we will see you soon.